Welcome to the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter, host for this episode and member of the Black Doctoral Network. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Clenora Hudson-Weems. She is a professor, an author, and screenwriter. Welcome, Dr. Hudson-Weems.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to our talk today.
Absolutely. So, if you would, please start by just sharing a little about your background.
Well, actually, it's been a long journey and it's been quite consistent. I got my bachelor's at a predominantly Black school, and I'm quite excited about your work. I want to talk to you about that later. But I finished my bachelor's degree in English at Lemoyne College in Memphis. I finished my master's degree at Atlanta University, another historically and predominantly Black institution. And of course, there I met my true mentors, Dr. Richard K. Barksdale, who was the actually edited the first or co-edited the first Black aesthetics anthology and Black Writers of America. He was my mentor. He was the dean of arts and sciences at Atlanta University. And of course, Lucy Grigsby, who was also my mentor. She was the chair of the Department of English at Atlanta University. I had 2 degrees in British Lit. How about that? And decided, because that's all we could do. If you're in English, it's going to be British or American, but it's going to be white. However, when I got to the PhD stage, I went to the University of Iowa, which is well known for its African American World Studies program. So I went there. And that's when I chose, they thought that I was going to do Black women writers because I had just got a contract earlier that year in 1985 to co-author the first book on Toni Morrison with Dr. Wilfred Samuels at that time, who was at the University of Utah. At any rate, once I got there, I flipped the script. I decided instead of writing on Black women writers to write on Emmett Till, because I was, a little bit tired of hearing us just not give this boy his proper place in the historical account of the modern civil rights movement. So that's another whole story. At any rate, so I got the PhD in African American World Studies, and it was much later when I got to the University of Missouri here that I decided, being the first Black faculty in the Department of English, that I wanted to hood some PhDs like me who were concentrating on us instead of others. And so I established the nation's first PhD in English with an Africana concentration. That was followed by, I think, Dr. Dolores Aldridge, very good friend of mine, endowed chair at Emory University, a great sociologist. She was the 2-term president of National Council of Black Studies. That's where we met. And so she was very excited about this. And of course, I think that Emory brought in a professor from another university, and he launched that same thing at, Emory. So anyway, we now have a PhD, in English with an Africana concentration. That's been another real big thing for me. Then, of course, I continued to work hard on Africana Womanism. And in fact, was very proud to have attended the nation's first, not the nation's, but the first international Africana Womanism conference at the University of Zimbabwe. The dean of faculty there, he was at that time the chair of the Department of English, I should say languages and literature. And so he's now the dean of faculty at the University of Zimbabwe. So it was fabulous, well attended by not only people from here in the States, places like, of course, Missouri, of course, California, Los Angeles area, and Delaware and Oklahoma, other places, but all over in Africa, several universities throughout Zimbabwe, as well as South Africa, University of South Africa, Botswana. It was great. And I was so happy to find it was much more than just academicians. We're going to be there, you know that. But then the vice president of the Republic of Zimbabwe did the opening welcome. I can't tell you how great that was. But we had the politicians there, the academicians there, the business people, and people in general, because African Womanism crosses these boundaries. It's not just academic, which is why I get engagements for community centers, for churches, etc. And that's the way it's supposed to be, because that's where we are. We're everywhere. What I have to make sure is that we remember that we are a collective body and we must remain everywhere doing everything together. That's how we win. That's how we achieve victory, is men, women, and children in it together. And interestingly, I wrote a poem when I was going to the first National Africana Womanism Conference in Pittsburgh back in 2009. And I had a 2-hour layover for the flight. I think I was in Wisconsin, but it was, I wrote this poem called Africana Womanism, I Got Your Back Boo. That's my poem. I love it. And I remind us that we're supposed to stay that way. I mean, let's face it. We didn't get out of slavery. We didn't get out of that just with us sisters. Okay. Harriet Tubman did not go down south for sisters only. She went for all of us, men, women, and children. And I have to keep that before us, because if we don't do that, it takes everything, all of us, to do it. If we don't keep that focus and start dividing on the gender line, you know what's going to happen. We can't afford to divide on the gender line. I'm not saying that anybody's perfect, but we need to do what Black women do, and let's get it straight. So don't get it twisted. We want to work together.
Wow.
And so I try to reflect that in the 18 characteristics of Africana womanism. We'll talk about that later.
Yes.
So,
wow.
Yeah, that's the start. How about that?
I'm truly in awe of your full body of work. Just amazing. I can't wait till we dive in.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So Dr. Julia Hare, as we know, who was highly regarded as a motivational speaker, she was an actress. She was quoted as saying, "Women who are calling themselves Black feminists need another word that describes what their concerns are." And you responded to that calling and saying it already exists. Africana Womanism.
Yes.
I love that. So can you share more about your engagement in this whole process of properly naming and defining the Africana woman?
Okay, it's interesting. Julia wrote that in 1993, the same year that Africana Womanism, the first Africana Womanism book, came out. It was a year after I spoke at the University of Nigeria in Nsukka at the International Conference on Women of African Diaspora. And so when my book came out, I didn't have that quote in the first edition because it had not come out when the publisher had it. But let me tell you, when that thing went into another printing, I made sure I opened up with Julia, because I needed to remind all of us that Africana womanism has been on the scene for quite some time. I actually, when I was at the University of Iowa in the fall of '85 is when I went there. They had a big conference, I think it was called, not a big conference, it was national. I mean, it was local, but everybody was there at the University of Iowa, and then the people in the community, in the city. But it was a TV thing, and people were there to witness it. The Silver Tongue, I think it was called. And so I just told them, listen, I am not a feminist. That's the first thing. You need to understand that it is important for us to name and define ourselves, and that's what I'm here to do. It has already been done in reference to the act itself. Africana womanism itself predates. It goes back to African antiquity. It is us back there doing it in concert with our males in the struggle, doing our thing. Women like Yaa Asatwa and the Asatwa, Yaa Asatwa War. The people, queens, I should say, queens like Yaa Asatwa, queens like Nzinga. They were always, carrying that banner and making sure that we took care of our families, even when the men were absent. There were other wars going on. Sometimes they weren't there. That didn't mean that you just sit back and say, "Oh, I'm just a lady and that's all." No, we do it all. We work together. When you're not here, no problem. I got your back, boo. That's the way it is, So anyway, so we had that conference, but that was okay. That small citywide meeting. What it really got big is when I did a plenary for the National Council of Black Studies, which is the major organization for Black Studies, that. And so it was in Boston in March. And I had set up my panel and everything, and I had one male on the panel. In fact, the male on my panel happened to have been the chair of my doctoral dissertation at the University of Iowa. How about that? And so I said, this is it. I mean, I like it just like that. We got these women up here. We're talking about Africana woman. At that time, I called it Black womanism. So I wanted to bring in later, maybe toward the end of that decade, I wanted to say Africana, because I wanted to bring in the land base, to show where we're from in that way. So it evolved. That was terminologically only. But at any rate, I went to the conference and I said, you know what? I have been tired of coming to this conference and listening to my sisters and brothers define us as Black feminists or whatever. And we really aren't. Because as you know, feminism dates back to the 1800s with the suffragette movement. It was about women and women having their rights. If I were a white woman, I would be concerned about female subjugation too, but not exclusively. Theirs is gender exclusivity. It should be heavily gender, but they should be a little more empathetic about other women as well, and to deal with and allow some space for us, which is what Sojourner Truth tried to do in 1852 at the All Women's Convention in Akron, Ohio, when she dared to motion to the front to articulate her feelings about female subjugation. But when you listen to that speech, it's self-actualization, it's Africana Womanism. She has to clear a space for herself as a human being first. She's Black. And then intertwined with that, okay, interconnected, I call it, not intersectionality. Interconnected, she's talking about the fact that she's still a woman, okay? So after she clears the space as a woman, then she has to move on and start talking about herself class-wise. Women have the best place everywhere, have to be helped over ditches and over mud puddles, and nobody ever gave me any of that, and ain't I a woman, okay? It's not until toward the end that she brings out the gender factor. So that is the prioritization of race, class, and gender, and that is what African womanism is. What I'm saying, you asked me another question, and of course, this thing just keeps it just keeps connecting. I don't know where to start and where to stop. You know what I mean? But at any rate, that's how it started when I was in Iowa and that conference in the fall, and then going to the big conference in Boston at spring of 1986, and saying, we got to stop it. We got to stop it. And when I did it, it was beautiful, because my colleague said, I said, you're talking about Black feminist writers and the feminist novel, even tried to do poor Zora Neale Hurston. Their Eyes of Watching God is about a 25-year quest for the protagonist to find the right man. Does that sound feminist to you? Please. And then you want to say, well, there's a little problem here. But the lady wrote it and she's dead and buried it. You don't like Their Eyes of Watching God, write your own. That's what I tell people. Because that is about an Africana woman looking 25 years, looking for the right man, and all the other things, they're part of it, but that's not the primary. Okay. So that's how it got started. And you know what? The rest is history.
The rest is history. I love it. I love it. So I tell you, you were the first African-American woman to really formulate a position of Africana Womanism. You are the author of 4 Africana Womanism books. You have Africana Womanism Reclaiming Ourselves. So you were reclaiming before reclaiming.
Absolutely.
Hello. You have Africana Womanist Literary Theory. You have Africana Womanism, Race and Gender, and the Presidential Candidacy of Barack Obama. And you have the Africana Womanism. Can you share how you actually first became interested in this whole notion of the Africana Womanism?
Again, as a literarian, and I was a literary critic first, exclusively, I wanted to become a theorist because I knew we had to create paradigms too, otherwise we're going to procrastinately make it fit something that doesn't fit. So we have to, we got to create our own paradigms, our own theoretical constructs. But at any rate, what happened is I just decided going to conferences and hearing us always interpret our novelists as and our novels as feminists wasn't working. And so I said, okay, let's do something real. Let's do something authentic. Let's go back and see how it was, how it's always been. See, African womanism is not in and of itself my creation, okay? I simply observe Black women in action, Black women living their everyday lives, moving in and out of this country globally. And this is who we are. What I did was that I named and I defined the paradigm relative to who we are. Because if you don't give it a name, people will just settle for another name. Hey, I've had women say, you're very outspoken. Yes. And you're independent. Yes, to a degree. And, you have your career. Yes, all that and some. But that doesn't make me a feminist. You understand? The feminist has no exclusive on gender issues. As a woman, I deal with gender issues, but I prioritize. And if I don't prioritize, and if I do gender exclusivity the way the original feminists did, I would have to be very selfish. Because I got the male in my family, I got my daddy, I got my brothers, I got my cousins and colleagues and friends, males, and when they're going through it, I'm going through it. So I can't say, well, hey, it's about us, it's about the woman. No, it's not. It's about the family for Africana people. It's the family that has to survive, not just the gender, woman. If I were white, I tell people, you're lucky I'm not white, because I'll be telling you where to get off. When Bell Hooks says she wants to move from the margin to the center of the feminist movement, I say, are you serious? You're going to move to the center of somebody else's reality? And what are they doing while you're moving to the center? Folding their arms? Letting you take over? That's not going to happen. There's nothing sacred about the term. Get your own term. Create it, snatch it out the sky, name it, and then put all the tenets that you need in there to define what you do and how you go about doing it. That's what you do. Don't take somebody else's term and make it yours. It's not going to work. And you know that whenever you have any element, when terms are like that, any part of that term, it means that there's something in common that you have there. It's like beauty, and then you got beautiful, and then you got beauteous, and you got that. All that means pretty, okay? That's it. When you talk about Black, you talk about Africa, or you talk about Africana, you're going back to Africa. That is Black, and that's positive. Negritude, they call us Negroes once. There's the Negritude movement. Black in French and some other languages is Negra, is Black. Okay, so that's all good. That means it's something, whether you say Negro, a Negra, a Negritude, or whatever, it still has that Black component. Okay, that's the same thing with feminism. If you're any form of feminist, if you're a mainstream feminist, if you are a cultural feminist, if you are a radical feminist, if you are a Black feminist, if you are an African feminist, if you are any type of feminist, you're still dealing with gender as a priority, period. I don't deal with gender as a priority. I'm not saying that gender is not important. It is very important, but it's not primary. You see me as a Black person before you see, oh, it's a woman. You see that later, especially with the androgynous dressing that we do. Yeah, who knows what it is, okay? But I'm simply saying that you see the color first. You see the race first, which means you've got to address that. And so Jonah Truth had to first clear that before she can begin to think about the absurdity of female subjugation. She can't talk about that first. Nobody's listening to her. She has to clear it first as a person, as a human being, as a Black being. And that's what it's all about.
Wow. Name and define. I love it.
Absolutely. We got to do
that. Now, your dissertation research was the study of Emmett Till. And what is so fascinating about that to me is you were so committed to this study that you were willing to risk not earning your doctoral degree in
Absolutely.
the event that you did not defend that dissertation. That's powerful. I don't know if anybody understands what that is, but that is powerful. Please take us through that whole scenario.
It was really interesting because when I came back to present my dissertation defense to get permission to write that dissertation, they all assumed that I was going to do Black women writers. I mean, I have the first book to write on Toni Morrison. I'm going to do Black women writers. I said, no, I've changed it. I said, I was at Delaware. I was the founding chair of Delaware State College Black Studies program. And so I had, right before I went to Iowa in 85, this for the fall, I had the 85 annual Black History Month event. I have it every year, and in fact, at Dale State, we had an event every month. I said, we're not just going to wait for the shortest and the coldest month of the year to do something. We're doing something every month, So at any rate, So I brought in this lady from Atlanta. She was the mother of one of the kids. You remember the kids being killed in the early 80s in Atlanta? Those kids, one after another, find up. Yeah.
Yes,
So I brought her
absolutely.
in. It was riveting. It was riveting. With that, I decided, you know what? I better go back to Emmett Till. I said, because I remember how it impacted me. I was just a little girl. And I remember my daddy was an inspector with Illinois Central Railroad coming in to tell my mother about it. You know how kids do, they sneak around and listen, and he brought the Jet magazine and he let her see it. And I had a way of finding it. But after I found it, it was so devastating. I just wanted to sleep. Every time I woke up, I wanted to go back to sleep. I'd eat a little something and I was back to sleep. And that was my escape to get away from it because I couldn't stand it. This kid, 14-year-old kid, he'd only been 14 for 1 month. His birthday was a month before. He was 13, more 13 than 14. And so I told him I wanted to write my dissertation on Emmett Till as the catalyst, the true catalyst of the civil rights movement. They said, Clenora, are you serious? They said, all historians have agreed that the impetus, or as you say, they said the catalyst of the civil rights movement was Rosa Parks. I said, but it's incorrect. I said, Emmett Till happened 3 months and 3 days prior to Rosa Parks' refusal. It set the stage for the Montgomery bus boycott. I'm sure it influenced her as well as it influenced everybody. It was a cause célèbre. All over the world, they were talking about this kid. In England, are you from the land where the boy was killed? Everybody was talking about this abominable incident. And I said, so I want to actually do a detailed study of it and show you and the world that we've missed the point, that Emmett is the true catalyst of the civil rights movement. My chair said, changing the catalyst from Rosa Parks to Emmett Till is virtually impossible, Clenora. All historians have agreed. Okay. I said, of course, I'm going to talk about that. John Hope Franklin. Let's start off with the first one. Let's deal with Benjamin Qualls in The Negro and the Making of America. That whole book never mentioned Emmett Till's name once, not once. Then you had Dr. John Blassingame, prominent historian at Yale University, chair of Africana Studies there, and he wrote the classic a book called what is it called? The Slave Community. You remember that? The Slave Community. And I said, they all said it. I said, but they're gonna change it when I show them. And it's exciting because I told them, I said, I just can't do it. They said, well, Clenora, what happens if you don't, or if you can't defend a dissertation? I said, well, we know the role that the academy plays in legitimizing things. And if I can't get the academy to do this with a solid defense, then I don't get the PhD. And I'm willing to take that chance. I took that chance. And it was interesting because when I finished that dissertation, the fall rather of the 1986, 1987, I was invited the first pre-doc. I didn't have a PhD until 88. The first pre-doc to deliver a plenary. I did the opening plenary at the National Ford Foundation Annual Conference in Washington, D.C. The same day that Condoleezza Rice did the afternoon plenary and Dr. John Hope Franklin did the closing plenary. I did the opening. It was riveting. And afterwards, all of the publishers, were up there and they were just like my committee. Remember, they wanted it and they had me to send it to a couple of them. I'm talking about major big league publishers like Oxford University Press and others. But it seemed that everybody wanted me to shape it where Emmett was a significant, as my committee member said, Dr. Hudson-Weems, he's like Clenora, he said, why can't you say Emmett, this is my committee member, was a significant factor in the rise of the civil rights movement? I said, because he was far more than a significant factor in the rise of the civil rights movement. He was the impetus. And that's when I said, then I don't get a PhD. So when Ford invited me and they called me their Ford legend, I finished that PhD in no time at all. I finished in less than 3 years. And I won't tell you how quickly I wrote the PhD dissertation because I couldn't sleep. I mean, I was writing constant. I might have slept maybe a few hours, a couple of hours a
Wow.
day if I slept every day. But at any rate, that's how it went down. I told him, I said, uh, John Hope Franklin, uh, not John Hope Franklin. I'm sorry, Benjamin. No, Benjamin. No, that was the guy who wrote the Slave Community, John Blassingame from Yale. He came and he heard me speak, and he came to me and he said, "You know what? When you really think about it, you're absolutely right. We historians missed it." So when I did the publication of the book 6 years later, of course I contacted him. I said, I want a blurb from you, and I want you to include that statement. And he did. He said, when you really think about it, Hudson-Weems is absolutely right. We historians missed it. Historians don't admit that they made an error. I was so pleased. And then, of course, you had Dr. C. Eric Lincoln, who had an endowed chair at Duke University. And he said that Hudson-Weems had challenged the most sacred shibboleths of the origins of the civil rights movement. Not everyone would want to agree with what she has to say, but few will lay the book down before she's had her say. And she says a lot America needs to hear again right now. And isn't that true? Emmett Till is a household name today, but it took over a year. It took over a decade and a half for us to get to that point, because people were still saying, oh, like they did in the dissertation defense. And I had a large group of people there. One lady said, I just think it's really wrong because it takes away from Rosa Parks. I said, no, it doesn't. I said, Rosa Parks will always be the mother of the movement. King will always be the father of the movement. I said, but make no mistake, Emmett will always be the child of the movement. He's a child of the movement. You have to get that. And doesn't disrespect her, doesn't take anything from her.
Wow, that's powerful. It's powerful, and it really leads me to what you say is the civil rights movement trilogy. And
That's
so
it.
that's it. I love it. And
That's it.
so I love it. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and Emmett Till.
There you go. There you go. You got it.
So I love it. I love it. So when you speak on this civil rights movement trilogy, what is the response?
Well, most people are just excited about this. They said, you know what? We never thought of a trilogy. I said, there it is, staring us in the face. Okay. Just like the bloated face of Emmett Till staring us right in the eye reminds us of the true ugliness of American racism. And they didn't want to see it. They didn't want to talk about it. Nobody wanted to admit it. They wanted something more palatable. Rosa Parks, she didn't want to give up the seat. I could talk about that at dinner. It's no problem. But to talk about Emmett and to imagine the bloated face of that boy, you can't have dinner behind that. It's not. You can't stomach it. They wanted something that they could deal with. When I say they, America wanted something more palatable, not that ugly. The bloated face of Emmett Till was truly ugly. It was abominable. It was unrecognizable. He was unrecognizable in that image. It's amazing, but we have to deal with it. Wow. We have to deal with it. And you know what? That reminds me of Mr. Moody. He was my mentor. Moody, oh, I loved him. He was the second cousin of Emmett's mother, Mamie, by marriage. Oh,
wow. Okay.
When Mamie's mother and father divorced, she later married Mr. Moody's uncle. Wow. Mr. Moody was a civil rights activist in Chicago, but he was also like a labor union leader with A. Phil Randolph. Mm. He was the one that A. Phil Randolph and the Brotherhood, sleeping car porters invited them up there. Mr. Moody asked him to please try to get Mamie to come with them, but everybody wanted Moody because Moody was an activist. He knew everything. I remember when I interviewed Mamie, and she said, Clenora, you seem to know everything about Emmett. Why did it take you so long to come to me? I said, because you're the icing for the cake, and that comes last. I'm not going to beat you up and have you to go through all this. I had to do it myself. Mm-hmm. And as a scholar, as a researcher, come up with my own, interpretation. And I want validation from you. That's why. She said, but I wish you would say one thing, Clenora. I said, what's that? She said, I wish you would say that Emmett allegedly whistled instead of he whistled. I said, I can't, Mamie. All of my research points at it. His cousins were there. They heard it. Mm. Everybody saw the woman run out after Emmett whistled, and she ran out of the grocery store with the gun and shot up in the air, and called them all kinds of ugly names. the black men who were sitting on the porch playing checkers, they heard it, they gapped, the guy was in there, Too Tight Collins was in there shoving, food, the canned foods and all that. He heard it. He was shocked. Everybody, they heard it. That was not he didn't allegedly whistle. I said, but you don't understand what you're saying. When you say that Emmett allegedly whistled, that you had taught him because he had a speech impediment that came from polio that he contacted when he was just 6 years old. And you would say that when he got kind of twisted had a hard time, uttering a word, just whistle it out. I said, but that's not what happened. What you're saying is that the whites who lynched Emmett, they made a mistake. They thought Emmett whistled, okay? And then in thinking that he whistled, you see, they killed him. He had created the American taboo, okay? The sanctity of white womanhood, he didn't regard. He didn't understand. I said, so do you think that was a mistake? No, it wasn't a mistake. It was a crime. Killing Emmett Till was a bloody crime. She said, I never thought of it like that. I said, so you got to stop saying it. He didn't allegedly whistle. He whistled. So what? That didn't give them the right to whistle. I mean, to kill him. I can hear Emmett saying, Dr. Hudson-Weems, yes, I did whistle, but that didn't make me a bad boy. Maybe say you're absolutely right. Didn't make him a bad boy. Stop hiding the fact that he whistled. He was going through the rites du passage, the rites of passage from boyhood to manhood. What managed boy doesn't whistle?
Wow.
What fast girl doesn't do something fast? I mean, that's just who we are. They were kids. That was an innocent act. That's all.
Wow. Amazing. Oh, I tell you. So what are your thoughts on today's Black woman and her knowledge of the Africana Womanism?
Well, it's a global concept, as you well know. The power of the media is not to be taken lightly. Some people don't want us to name and define ourselves. So they push this thing that they have, and we piggyback off of it. Personally, I'm serious. I don't know any white woman who can tell me what to do, because I come from a strong family background with a strong mother, and she told me what to do. That's just the way it is. So when Black women name themselves after a movement that actually was inspired probably by our way of being, when they say they want to move from the home place to the workplace, the feminists, Black women have always been in the workplace. She was co-workhorse with the Black males during slavery. Give me a break. We're looking forward to retirement. Okay. When they look and say, I want to find voice and break silence. I didn't know a silent Black woman. A Black woman would tell you quickly, excuse me, honey, but hey, enough is enough. We love each other. We respect each other. We got to stop trying to beat up each other. But I'm simply saying, back to this. We need to just articulate and explain why we got to do something a different way. We don't have a problem doing that. So if we were the blueprint, and I see us as a blueprint, why are you going to name yourself after a movement that possibly, obviously, was influenced by who we are and how we go about our lives? That's duplicating a duplicate. If you're in the academy, why are you duplicating a duplicate if you're the real deal? So I don't need to duplicate the duplicate. I'm going to keep on creating. God has given me the vision. I'm going to use it, and I'm going to share it with the world. We are not people who take our dictates from others. We have our own way of doing things. You know that. We have to, because we've been treated differently. Our priorities are different. If I was a white woman, of course I'd be doing a gender issue, but I'm not. I'm Black. And it's just as important to me what happens to males in my community as what happens to me, as what happens to the children. We're all in it together. I'm going to recite that poem for you too at some point.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Speaking of poems, Alice Walker, who we know as an author and a poet, first used the term womanist in her short story in 1979, I think, was Coming Apart. So I want you, and you've done a great job now, but can you explain the difference between what she coined as womanism from what you just really preach on as the Africana womanism?
First of all, the terminology is different. You know, she says the womanist, and let me define what she says. The womanist is, I talked about this in the first chapter. Alice Walker, in her collection of essays in search of our mother's gardens, has a little paragraph on womanism. She's not a theorist. She never purported to have been a theorist. She's a creative writer. She writes poetry, she writes novels, essays, but I'm a theorist. I've written 4 books, and God knows how many book chapters and articles. So I am a theorist. And so you can't theorize in a paragraph, okay? She says in Search of Our Mother's Garden, but people have taken it and run wild with it, as if she's come up with this whole theory. She says, a womanist is, quote, a Black feminist or feminist of color who loves other women sexually and or non-sexually, appreciates and prefers women's culture, and who sometimes loves individual men sexually or non-sexually. And I'm like, if you said sexual and non-sexual, you're already taking it and to explain the fact that you're not just talking about intimacy. So that's fine. So why does that have to be sometimes? Why can't you always love men sexually and or non-sexually? Committed to survival and wholeness of entire people, male or female, that only I agree with her. But it culminates with womanist is to feminist is purple to lavender. I don't know the difference. Just a shade differentiation. I'm not talking about a shade differentiation. I'm talking about an entirely different agenda. I'm talking about an entirely different set of priorities, race, class, and gender, so that we are nothing alike. Nothing alike. What happens is that you find the womanist theory oftentimes, doing a lot of what I've been doing for decades. And so you think that's the same, but that's not my fault. At least they say that the Black feminist says that she deals with the simultaneity of race, class, and gender. That's in the anthology, that big fat anthology called in response to Riverside Anthology of the African American literary tradition. And they speak very highly of Africana Womanism. And you were quoting it pretty much as the first, and in fact, I had launched a new critical discourse in the Black women's literary movement. That's what it says. Wow. Because before that, they were all going this wrong direction, So now we're going another direction. Wow. But at any rate, when they talk about the simultaneity of race, class, and gender, I go, well, you know what? I don't think I'm good juggling that well. I'm doing this simultaneously. It's like when I wake up in the morning, I open my eyes first. Okay. Smile and then turn over and stretch and do whatever, and then I rise, as Maya said. And then I rise. Okay, yes. But I don't jump and do all at one time. I can't simultaneously do it. Makes no sense really to me. Wow. But at any rate, I make it very clear. It's natural and it's easy. I love it. We are who we are. It's no problem at all. The African feminist is basically an Africana womanist with terminology problems only. And a lot of them, when they hear Africana womanism, they say, you know what? Hey, I'm with you. Because we were always dealing with the issues. You think, for example, of, and I was invited to speak up at Keynote, actually, up at Wellesley College, where Chiamai Philomena Steady was chair. And she's written a couple of good books, but she makes it very clear that the African feminist is pretty much the same. And she, in 2 of her books, 2 edited volumes, and she says it very clearly what I say, amen, that is what makes us different. She says here, for the Black woman in a racist society, racial factors rather than sexual ones, are you with me, operate more consistently in making her a target for discrimination and marginalization. You understand? She's very clear about that. She says also earlier in here, she says, let's see, various schools of thought, perspectives and ideologies, proclivities have influenced the study of feminism. She said something. I wanted to really just get right what she said. She makes it very clear. Now I thought it was in the first, chapter, but she says basically that racism is the first thing that they deal with. African feminists. It's just that the name African feminist, that's the problem. But the agenda is the same. You understand?
Yes.
So that's the difference between the feminist or Black feminist, African feminist, a womanist, and an Africana Womanist.
I love it.
Yeah. I think Africana Womanist is more authentic. How about that?
I love it. I will take it. In the Africana Womanism Society, they list 18 characteristics. And in the second grouping of these characteristics, it includes the family-centeredness. And that goes back to what you were saying. We focus on the entire unit, the Black family unit. Talk about the commitment and up to the immediate and extended, for that point, family, and why that's important.
Okay. First of all, I'd just like to clarify the Africana Womanist Society got its 18 characteristics from Africana Womanism, which are the features that I observed us to have dating back to 1980s, before the formation of the Africana Womanism Society. The 18 characteristics, they're there. We are, and I'll tell you right now what they are. We're first self-namers and self-definers. We are family-centered, as you were saying, that's very important. We're in concert with the male in the struggle. We are strong. This is physically, of course, but more than physically, we are emotionally and psychologically strong. That we're in concert, as I said, in concert with male in the struggle, that we are genuine in sisterhood. You know how we need each other to tell each other what to do and how to do it. That we are certainly flexible role players, you know. We get muscles. Say, for example, if you have a spouse and you do things at home, you know, you're not like this one particular feminist, I've forgotten her name now, when she calls the chores of women at home, being mothers and nurturers, feeble-minded chores for 8-year-olds. No, we don't consider those feeble-minded chores for 8-year-olds. Those are serious chores in which we are molding character. We are working to have a good, strong, beautiful family. So that's serious business. That we that we are whole, that's well-rounded, and we're authentic, which is we're culturally connected. That we demand respect and recognition. That's very important. But sometimes women forget, they too often forget, that this is reciprocal. For example, if you're talking about men and say, you know, these men they're just, oh God, I just can't stand them. They don't respect women. They're all dogs and they do this and they do that. I said, but excuse me, if you're asking for respect, shouldn't you be giving respect? It's reciprocal. If you don't, they're going to come back on you. Nobody's going to let you call them an animal and not have something to say about it. It's not going to be nice either. So if you want respect, you got to give it. That we are, that we are very respectful about elders. We know that. We should be. A lot of people have lost that respect and they take advantage of the elders, and that's unfortunate. But remember, they laid it out. I tell my students when they looked at, for example, Eyes on the Prize, they go, wow. I said, those are people your age then, fighting, and a little older, fighting for our rights. I said, now you look at them as nothing. You wouldn't be where you are today had they not done those things. And they saw it, and they had a different attitude about the elders behind that. That we are also, we have a sense of spirituality. Whatever your religion is, that's your business, but you know there's a higher being that's operating. And of course, we're waiting for the answer to what's happening today, because I personally can't handle it. None of us can really handle it. We think we got it, but it's going to take a force, an entity. It's a spiritual force that's going to have to guide us. God, in other words, is going to have to lead us out of this. That we are certainly adaptable. We don't have to have a room of one's own. I mean, we don't have to have an office in order to become writers. When the kids go to bed, so what? The kitchen becomes the office, and the kitchen table is now my desk. Give me my laptop and I'm on it. Okay. That we are certainly it's adaptable. That we let's see, mothering and nurturing without apology. I don't know if I missed anything, but that's basically it. We are mothering and nurturing. We make sure our kids and our spouses and that we all sit down and have good, healthy meals. We take care of each other like that so that next generation can thrive. So that's who we are.
I love it. Now,
Mhm.
over 20 years ago, you stated that the rejection of white organizations is something that Africana women take part in. Africana women focus on things that help with the elimination of oppression, which is considered to be the most important thing in order for the Africana community to survive. Does that still ring true in the year 2021?
Let's hope so. Although I have to say that I get a little nervous sometimes because I see our women putting more emphasis on somebody else's agenda than ours. That's very sad. I mean, it's in vogue to just talk about the woman, the strength of the woman. Somebody asked me in an interview that I did an interview back New Year's Eve, in fact, this year. And the lady said, what do you think about Black girl magic? I said, I never thought about it. The strong strength of Black. I said, we've always been there. And Black men always knew it. So it's nothing new. It's no new kid on the block. That's who we are. We're strong, but we're not necessarily this here like the picture of the woman, the white woman, like to see it showing her muscles. I don't have to show my muscles, and when if we get to a classroom, we need another seat. I don't look at my girls in the classroom, my ladies, and say, sweetheart, because you're close to the door, can you go out there and bring us a chair in? No, I'm not. I look at one of those guys in there, flex your muscles, please. Go out there and bring us some chairs in. We're short of 2 chairs, okay? That's what happens. I'm not lifting in chairs. I'm biologically different. We don't have the baby this year and the man has it next year. We're not that equal like that. We don't share like that. We are biologically different, and we need to understand the fact that we're women. We need to save ourselves and protect ourselves so that we can have some babies and do whatever is necessary to keep the human race moving it. Moving it. I talk about male-female relationships as being positive. Like I tell people, I don't care what your sexual preference is. That's your business. It needs to stay that way. That's your personal business. That's your choice. I don't care. I don't talk. One of the students said, Doc, that's when you talk about race, class, and gender. Aren't we talking about gender preference? I said, no, baby. I said, you know what? I'm also a grammarian. If I wanted to talk about that, I would say race, class, and sexuality. I am not interested in your sexuality. That's not on this table. Your sexuality is fine, and you have a right to defend it and be it. That's perfect. However, the only way the human race is going to continue itself the way we see it now is male-female interaction some way. And they say, well, if you just got to have a kid, just go to the sperm bank. Excuse me, can you please tell me where the sperm bank got the sperm? There has to be a connection at some point. And we need to stop pretending that that's not a reality. It is.
Right.
And let us do whatever we want to do, whatever is comfortable for us. Don't attack anybody. Allow people to be. Like we're demanding that the dominant culture let us be. Don't tell me who I am, because I'm going to get you straight. I am who I am. And I'm not assimilating. I'm not assimilating. That's what gets me this whole thing about diversity. Yeah, think of Du Bois's diversity. Cultural diversity, true diversity. That's what we talk about, where we're not imitating or assimilating. We are being ourselves. And I told my person when I first got here, I said, please understand that diversity comes in more than color. Right. It comes in thought and action as well. You understand? Okay. We have some whites who are, I hate to say it, but it's true. We have some whites who are ideologically blacker than blacks. Some of them who really want to do the right thing, who are very concerned about injustices, who want to right the wrong. And we have some blacks, most of us feel that way, but we do have some who are pushing someone else's agenda and pretending that there's not really that much of a problem. I heard one lady say, I don't understand why we have to have Black studies, because that has nothing to do with, say, for example, courses like math. Okay, and science and all that. And so it's not about the color. I said, Black studies is always appropriate. Are you serious? When you talk about other inventors and things like that, you identified the people responsible for bringing forth things, okay? That is what College Woodson, the father of Black historiography, wanted to do when he started the investigation, started what became Black history, or Negro, they call it Negro History Week, became Black History Month. That's what he started in the 1920s, okay, during the Harlem Renaissance. He wanted to share the contributions of Blacks so we can respect us, understand that we have contributed significantly to the culture, okay? So my thing is, we have to talk about that. If you're going to talk about math, how are you going to talk about math and not remember those hidden figures who are responsible for the success of the launching of Apollo 11? Ask Armstrong. He'll tell you he wasn't getting on there unless those women. You're talking about Johnson, you're talking about Vaughn, and you're talking about Jackson. Those three women, they were mathematicians and they were engineers. Phenomenal women. You can talk about science, and you talk about, look at Benjamin Banneker. Even though he was born during slavery, he was responsible for the launching of the first series of almanacs. I mean, he is an astronomer. Okay. He also was one of the major surveyors of Washington, D.C., and actually created the first all American pieces in the making of this clock. Okay. He was brilliant. And nobody wants to talk about that letter that he wrote to Thomas Jefferson. He, of course, was the embodiment, the supreme paradigm of inherent Black inferiority. He made the whole idea of the bell curve roll over and give it up, because he was by no means one that showed you that Blacks are biologically inferior. That inherent Black inferiority is a myth, absolute myth. So when we study and share what we've done, you change your mind about those myths about Black people, because people haven't always identified us as being the people responsible for it. I remember looking at a cartoon with my baby one Saturday, and they had a little caricature of the fabulist as a white guy. I said, that man wasn't white. I said, Aesop was a full-blooded African. He's the one that creates the fables, but we don't get credit for what we've done. So we have to announce it for people. People have to know that we do more than just demonstrate and yes, sing and whatever. We create. We are inventors. Yes. We do all of it. We do it all.
I love it.
I'm trying to
I love it. So what's next for Dr. Hudson-Weems? What's next for you?
Well, I'm going to continue doing my work on both sides of the coin. And I'm going to let some things just happen, and you'll say, oh, wow, there it is. I'm always working. I have a textbook that's coming out. One of the major publishers here had asked me to do a textbook, and I made sure it was an edited volume, because I want the original people in their particular fields of expertise to represent. So this anthology, it's not going to be an anthology, but a textbook is coming out in July. It'll be ready for the fall. So I'm doing that. I have a sequel to my book. This is my book. You're saying Africana Womanism. Yes. This is the 5th edition that Routledge Press out of London and in New York and Australia. This came out in the October of 2019. Wow. Africana Womanism Reclaimed now says, but it's a reprint of the classic 1993 version that's out of print now, but it has 5 new chapters, dear. Wow. 5 new chapters. Awesome. Very important. And one of the chapters is, because I want to make it very clear, one of the chapters is entitled Africana Womanism's Race, Class, and Gender, Pre-Intersectionality. All of this about intersectionality, that's fine, but that's not what we do. We interconnect. I've been using interconnection for years. And so one of the person who did the afterword to my book, Dr. Christian, said here, the current academic fad phase is intersectionality, as if those of us in Africana discourse never considered the myriad of issues encountered by our communities. Race, class, and gender, and the prioritization therein have always been key issues for comprehending Africana womanism, dating back to the 80s. So when it came out, intersectionality in 1989, I already had a couple of articles out, already on the scene, and the book is about to come out a couple of years later. So we have to understand that when you talk about intersectionality comes together, and then it branches off and focuses here and focuses there. We are like fabric. We don't break off. I think the supreme example of that is looking at Sojourner Truth, and ain't I a woman? Even though, I don't have the best place ever, ain't I a woman? Even though I'm a human being, but mistreated and looked at as not being, ain't I a woman? Even though she deals with all of that, but she never breaks off and focuses. It's still like fabric, interwoven. You see the difference? We have to understand that we are interconnected Africana women, and we are very beautifully connected with all our family members. That includes men, women, and children. The poem, I Got Your Back, Boo, is hidden in this book. Google it and get you a copy, and you'll see that poem. And I just want to read the first line because the first stanza is just short, because it looks like we are running out of time, but I just can't let you not hear the poem. Don't you know by now, girl, we're all in it together. Family centrality, that's it. We're going nowhere without the other. That means the men, the women, and the children too. Truly collectively working. I got your back, boo. And then I talk about racism and classism and sexism in the next three stanzas. But in each one, I close with, I got your back, boo.
I got your back, boo. Well, I tell you, we have been in history class this hour. Dr. Hudson-Weems, I thank you for joining us today. This has been an absolute pleasure. And if you will, please tell our viewers and our listeners where they can go to learn more about you and the work that you are doing.
Okay. Well, all they have to do is just Google it, and they'll see it with Wikipedia on Africana Womanism, with Wikipedia with Clenora Hudson-Weems. I don't do any of that stuff, so there's a lot of little stuff. It's pretty accurate, but some of the stuff is not completely, but all they got to do is go to the page that Amazon has on my books and just order your book. And then, of course, you could always, if you want to support Africana Womanism, just, you can just go and send Cash App, because we're trying to keep it going. I'm working hard to make sure I get the word out. It's Cash App, and honey, it helps me to keep rolling. I'm still moving. I have 2 books other than the one I talked about that I'm working on simultaneously. Wow. One is pretty much finished. That is the sequel to this, which is an edited volume. And the other is the one on legendary Africana people. I mean, I won't tell you about that, but that's going to be a magic book. It's finished, by the way. I'm just smoothing it out, doing a few things here and there, but I'm always doing more than one thing. We're like that.
That's right. Oh, we're like goodness. That. Again, I say thank you. And also, thank you for joining us today for the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter, and we hope you will join us again next time. But for now, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and tell a friend.